Okay, we are gonna start sewing together our basic skirt, and we're gonna start by sewing the darts of the skirt. So we've got two back pieces, these big long pieces that have darts in them. So these are these sort of triangle shaped things, right, that we cut out, and we've got these little notches for the darts. And remember, we even marked the dart point. You can see this tiny little point that I marked here with blue chalk. So a dart is something that gives shape. And so obviously when we're doing a basic fitted skirt, we're gonna have to shape it around the body, around the curves of the hips and the curves of your bottom. It's a curvy spot, right? The whole body is really curvy actually. So in order to create shape and curve, when we don't have like a stretchy material, it's like we're not using spandex, we're using a woven fabric, what we're gonna do is we're gonna pinch parts of the fabric in these dart shapes that's going to allow us to have a part that is pulled in for the tiny waist and then gives us a way for the rest of the body, the hips, to have a place to be, okay? So the darts are basically a place where the fabric is pinched together and sewn to create a three-dimensional shape. It's going to be really evident pretty quickly that you're going to take your flat 2D piece of fabric and turn it into a three-dimensional piece that is no longer flat as soon as you make your dart, okay? So I'm working with the two back pieces because it's a good place to start. So again, I've got two identical pieces like this, and they each have one dart. Something to consider is that we always want to make sure we're doing mirrors of each other, right? There's a left side of the body and a right side of the body. We don't want to make two left sides or two right sides, right? That wouldn't really work. So whatever we do, if we do a dart or something to this that goes in one direction, we want to do the opposite on the other back piece. And I'll show you what I mean as I go. So we'll go ahead and start. And so this is, again, this is the back of the skirt. And this perfectly straight line here, it's really easy to see that it's straight, is the center back. If you go back to your pattern and you place this piece against the pattern, you'll see that we wrote center back on this side. It's perfectly straight. This is where we're going to put in the zipper. This side has a slight curve to it. It's a slight curve for the hip. This side also has a notch on the hip, okay? So that's how we can look at this right away and know that this is my hip side and this is my center back side, okay? On this center back side, we had this double notch. That's where the zipper goes, okay? So it'll be really obvious that this also is the center back. Not only is it the straight piece, but it's got a double notch for the zipper, okay? So let's go ahead and figure out this dart. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pinch it in and sew it to this little blue point that we marked. But so that you can understand exactly what's happening, I'm gonna draw out for you exactly what we're gonna do. So I usually don't draw my dart lines out when I'm sewing, but you can while you're getting comfortable. So I'm just getting a little piece of chalk. And the reason I'm getting chalk, you could use a pencil, but you want to be very light. The idea is that I don't want to see my markings later. I don't want any of it to come through to the final product. I don't want to see anything I've drawn on the fabric. So just like in the pattern, we had this triangle that was happening here that started from this notch and went down to this, make sure you can see, went down to this dart point, okay? So I can draw this right back in. So I'm just lining up my ruler with the notch and the dart point. And I'll use chalk because I can wash this away or wipe it away later. And I'll do the other side as well. So if this makes you more comfortable to draw it out, go ahead and by all means do that. So now I can see where I'm going to sew, but I've got a triangle. So you're probably thinking, well, how am I going to sew a triangle? So again, what you're going to do is pinch this, and this is where you'll need some pins. I'll get a few, and you're going to pull these pieces together so we can actually, so that we can see our line. We'll do it in the opposite direction. We're going to pull these two notches together where they meet, okay? We're going to line this up nicely. And the line that I'm going to sew is this blue line that I've drawn. So I'll go ahead and pin in this direction, which is opposite to that. And then I'm going to pinch down here at this tip. And see how I'm kind of shaking it? I'm letting the fabric fall. My goal is to let the fabric fall where it wants to, not to fight it, but to let it do its thing so that I can make this really pretty shape, okay? So this is usually where I stick my next pin, is right at this point. This is the end of the dart. So we're gonna sew from this point, so right off the edge, and that's gonna be what we end up sewing. And I'll go ahead and put one more in the center here, okay? And again, what you can do now is just sew right on this blue line. The next dart I sew for you, I won't draw the line, and you'll see that it should be identical. There shouldn't be a huge difference, but if drawing the line helps you to understand exactly what we're doing, then go ahead and by all means do it. Just make sure that in the finished product, I don't end up seeing that. So if it's pencil, if it's chalk, wipe it away, kind of wash it away, make sure we don't see it in the end, okay? So now I've got this pinched in, and I'm gonna sew just on my line, starting here, and I'm gonna go all the way off the fabric. So let me set this back up so we can look at the machine. And then I do want to say really quickly, just because I'm seeing a lot of issues with this, the first thing you're always going to do when you walk over to your sewing machine is test it. I hadn't used mine in a little while. Some of the dials I think had gotten moved just from me storing it. So you want to make sure it's working properly. So take like a little scrap of muslin and test to make sure your machine looks perfect before you sew on your real product, okay? Always do this. So my machine is off. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it on, hit that light. I've got my bottom thread and my top thread. Both of them feel good. Put my presser foot down. I'm gonna hold on to these two threads for that first stitch, walking my needle down, holding on to these first two threads, even for the first few stitches, okay? Now I can let go and I can use the presser foot to check this. Okay, so needle up, presser foot up. I'm gonna pull this, and let's take a look. This is what it should look like. It should be a beautiful stitch on the front and back. If one of these does not look like this, you've got to restart what you're doing. You've got to pull your entire thread out, maybe even take your bobbin thread out. You've got to start over and fix it. This is the only thing that's acceptable. If it doesn't look like this on both sides, you need to stop and figure out what's going wrong. And it's probably not your machine, it's probably user error. Something is not done correctly. So you would go back up and rethread from the beginning to make sure you're hitting all the points correctly. You can go back to those videos, make sure that you thread the machine correctly, make sure that you thread the bobbin correctly. You can make sure, again, that you're actually sewing correctly, that the presser foot is down when you're sewing, that you're holding on to the strings for those first few stitches to make sure they don't, see like in the beginning here, those first few stitches will try to bunch up on you because it doesn't have perfect tension when it's starting out. But you want to make sure that your stitch looks really nice and absolutely perfect before you begin. I cannot stress this enough. If it doesn't look like this now, it's going to be a hot mess when you try to sew your skirt together. So that said, my machine looks good. I'm happy. I'm gonna go ahead and sew my dart. Okay, So I'm gonna go ahead and put let me turn this off so you can see. I'm gonna start sewing right at this notch, okay? Right where the opening is. So I'm gonna sew right underneath where that little cut is. I'm going to walk my needle down. Let me make sure my thread's going in the right direction. Place my presser foot down, walk my needle down to that spot. And again, like I always do, I am holding on to these threads for the first 1 or 2 stitches to make sure that I get a nice perfect tension. I can now pull this pin out and I can sit here and walk the whole stitch to make sure that I'm sewing right on that line. Or I can use my presser foot. I'm gonna pull that pin out before I get there. And when I get to the end, I wanna sew right off the edge. I wanna sew it so smoothly to where it just blends right off the edge. There we go. And when I've sewn right off the edge, I can pick up my needle. Definitely make sure to cut so that I've got a few inches here to be able to tie this. But this is what it should look like. See how I've got that diagonal line sewn, but it's ultimately a straight line. This isn't a difficult thing to sew. You're sewing a straight line from the notch to the dart point, and you're going smoothly right off that edge so that it makes this really pretty point. You don't want to sew where it goes down and then loops over, some kind of strange shape. You want to sew right off the edge really smoothly. And it looks the same on the back, and you can see how here on the back it didn't exactly hit the blue line, and that's totally fine. Like I said, normally when I sew a dart, I don't even mark it. I just let the fabric do what it wants to do, okay? And so what I like to do now is go ahead and tie this off up at the top and tie that into a little double knot so that it doesn't fray. And I can clip it. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to tie this into a double knot or maybe even a triple knot. Because this is all wrapped together, it's kind of hard to unravel. So often what I do is take a pin. There we go, just to unravel my sort of twist that has happened right down here. Okay, so I'm going to tie this into a triple knot there. And then I'll clip that with maybe like 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 of an inch, kind of leaving on the edge, okay? And so what happens is when I open this, now I've got what will become the tiny, tiny waist, and it goes into this really pretty point, which will go over the hips and the largest part of the hips on the skirt. Basically going over your butt right here and to give you lots of space, okay? So the next thing that we would do is press this to get it really nice and crisp and how we like it. Okay, so I'm gonna press my dart. So the first thing I do is open it up, and you're always going to press the darts, like the excess of the dart, in the direction towards either center front or center back. And remember, we can tell which one ours is because center back has this double notch here. So I'm just gonna take this excess and press it right towards center back, okay? And then I can come with my iron, and I'm starting from the top, and I'm pulling as I go, gently pulling to make sure that I'm not pressing down any folds that I don't want. And see how I'm using the tip to go right into the tip of that dart, okay? Again, we have now made our 2-dimensional fabric, our flat piece of skirt fabric, we've made it now into a 3-dimensional object. This is never gonna be flat again, so that's not what we want. We want this to happen, where I've naturally, now if I lay this down, I've got this sort of bump that's happening. The bump is a good thing. The bump is what I want. What I also want is for this to be smooth. When I press this, I just want to see a really smooth stop here. I don't want to see a fold of fabric right here. I don't want to see a really strange shape. I want it to just be flawless, okay? And see how, again, I've pulled it so taut that you can almost see the threads coming out. I've pulled it so that I've got the fullest amount of the fabric, and I've gone flawlessly into this dart point, which just blends really well. So imagine if this is sitting now over the top of your round hips, it's gonna look really pretty on the body, okay? So again, I pressed that from behind. I don't even think, I mean, I just did it, I already can't remember. I don't even think I hit it from the front, but you could turn around and do it from the front again, which is usually what I like to do, but I feel like I kind of nailed it right away by doing the back. And I'm not going down much further right now. Notice how I'm even picking up the fabric than that dart point, okay? I don't want to mess it up. It's a delicate little thing. I want this to fall nicely, okay? So that is me pressing that dart. And let's go ahead and set up one more dart so that you can see how I would do it if you didn't mark it. And this time I'm going to use my skirt front just to show you. So this is the one really big piece that I have, right? So look, it's really big, long. Here is my center front of the skirt. Here is one dart on the right side and one dart on the left side, okay? So this has two darts in one piece. This is going to be the front. So I'll go ahead and pinch both of these darts in the same direction. And what I mean by that is, again, so remember this piece here, this is the one we just did. This dart is going towards now what becomes the back, right? It's hard to tell with our muslin because the front and the back looks identical. But now I have seam allowance. This is excess. This is what's on the inside of the garment. This becomes the back on this side. And this is now the front, my good side, okay? So when I go to do my other skirt back piece, right? This one I haven't sewn yet. What I want to make sure is that I do the opposite, right? So again, here is my, let me make sure I've got it. This is my center back. This is where that double notch is. Okay, so this becomes the left piece. And then this piece, let's see, one that I didn't sew. Here's also my double notch on this side. So I want to flip this over and make sure I do the opposite. Okay, so that these pieces could come together. So that I would just make sure that when I am pinching this dart excess, and I'll just kind of hold it roughly in my hand so you can see that I'm doing it so that they're doing opposite things. Actually, I guess I'll pinch going in that direction towards center back, okay? So that way this double notch would meet this double notch, and these two pieces would work together. They would be mirror images of each other, okay? Does that make sense? So this dart seam allowance would be in the back, this dart seam allowance would be in the back, and they would both work together. Again, maybe this will make more sense when I show you on the skirt front. I just want to make sure, say again, if I pinch this fabric towards this side, I don't want to now pinch this fabric towards this side, okay? You want to pick one side to be your back and pick one side to be your front. Think of it that way, okay? It'll be pretty clear if you go to continue assembling the skirt and you've got darts going in the wrong direction. You'll have to rip them out and do it again. So hopefully this is making sense as you're going. I'm just gonna press this before I begin setting these darts up, getting it nice and flat and smooth as I can. And then I'll come back over here to set these up. So again, what I usually do is just take my two notches and pin them together. And then at the same time, the first thing I like to do actually is I'll take a pin and stick it right in to that dart point, okay? So that now I can see it from this side, I can also see it from this side. Okay, so 2 notches up here come together. I'm just making sure they're meeting nicely. There we go. And now I can look for my point here. And I want to make sure that is perfectly on the fold, okay? So that I've got that marked right here, okay? And then again, I'm just letting the fabric fall where it wants to. These darts in the front are a lot smaller than the darts in the back. And can we figure out why that is? There's a big butt in the back that we have, and in the front we have less of a curve in the front. So we don't need as much of a dart. We just have like a little curve in the front. But in the back we have a big curve. Okay, so I'm taking this extra pin and I'm pinning right in the same spot as this pin earlier that I stuck through the dart point, okay, just to hold it in place a little better. So now, without marking it, without drawing it, I know that I'm gonna sew from here until I hit this point and sew right off the edge, okay? I'll do this again so you'll have a couple of chances to see it, okay? So I'm gonna come over here, put this down, get needle down, I'm holding the first few stitches, pull that pin out, and again, my goal, kind of with my eyes, turn this off so maybe you can see better, I'm not sure, is to just sew straight from here, right off the edge, till I hit this pin, okay? I can even maybe remove that one for right now if it's not super necessary. Okay, let's see how good I got. It's always like a challenge. So it looks like in this case, I was ever so slightly, I went off the edge ever so slightly before I got to this pin. That's probably fine, but you can see what I did. I sewed that same line just at that angle from one side to the next, okay? And it looks good on both sides. I'm gonna tie it off, do my little double knots. Again, I prefer this to back tacking because if I need to pull it out, it's gonna be much easier to rip out. I'll pull this out, and again, see this is just all twisted up, so it makes it hard for me to tie it into a little knot. But if I can get, it's like an exercise in patience. If I could get my pin in there, I can open it up, this heavy twist that I've made, and I can double or triple tie this little guy and cut it about 1/4 of an inch, okay? So now I've got this one baby dart, okay? It's just a slight shape around the stomach. But basically because this skirt, it's high-waisted, so it comes up to, you know, a higher part, like right underneath the ribs, and then it still has to get around the fuller part of our body, our stomach and our hips, okay? And you can see in the front where I've gone right to that, you can see that blue dot, so I have kind of nailed it. I could feel good about that, and again, I could later wipe that chalk away so I make sure not to see it. So here's where, again, I just want to be clear. I've got this dart, I've got to do another dart right over here. What I wouldn't want to do is pinch this fabric in this direction and now sew my dart on this side. Do you see how that would be funny? Because here's obviously the front of my fabric, looks really nice, and there's the back. I don't want to put my dart now on the front of the fabric. So I just want to make sure that it's making sense, okay? That my 2 darts are going to be in the back. So I'm going to pinch in this direction. And then let me go ahead, just so you guys can see it again really clearly. I'm just gonna, you can see this tiny, tiny blue dot. I'm gonna put a pin through, and I'm gonna draw this on the other side. Again, drawing it so that you can really see what we're doing. Again, I usually don't draw it when I'm sewing, but just to make sure we're all getting the correct thing, I want to show you. So I'm just going to put my tiny point on this side too. Now I can get rid of that pin, and I will draw my dart legs. on this side with my chalk. There we go. Really lightly, but now you can see what's happening. Okay, and now I'll pinch it, but it's the same principle, whether you draw it or you don't draw it. I make sure that I can see in some way my dart point. And again, it's a lot of ways that I typically do that is just stick a pin right into it. Now I can see it, now I haven't lost it. And I'm gonna pinch up at the top, putting those two notches together. Stick a pin. Oh, I guess I should consider which way I'm going to sew. I typically sew on this side. Either way will work, but it's almost like a weird habit. So I can go ahead and set myself up and pin on that side. Okay, so pinching those together. And then again, I've got this one down here. What you want to make sure you do, and this is why I marked this one so you can see. So I don't want to sew it like this, right? See how, well, I've pinched it, and I could just now sew this line, but look how I can see that triangle. This isn't correct. What I want to do is pinch it so that it's right on the fold, so that it is exactly on the fold, okay? So that I'm sewing that triangle exactly the same on both sides. I do not, want to sew it like this, right? That's not correct. Does that make sense? Really wrap your head around that and make sure that you can understand what I'm saying. You're wanting to sew exactly the same on both sides, okay? So make sure where that point ends that you are exactly on the fold here. And again, now I can take this pin and put that in to hold it down, and I can get rid of this other one that was just kind of like a placeholder. To make sure that you're sewing on the right side on both sides, again, at any point I can take my pin and put it through, right, because this is right on the line, and I can see, is it hitting the same spot on the other side? It kind of is. Look how it's a little bit lower, but pretty close. And that would be a way to test that you're in the right spot, So I'll do it again here, right through there. And again, just a little lower on this side. You could always adjust your fabric slightly if you needed to. Because let's see how it gets down here. I'm going through that line, just a little lower on this side. I'm not going to stress it too terribly much, as long as the fabric's sitting nice and flat. Usually will be pretty forgiving, but that's how you can kind of test for accuracy. So let's go ahead and sew this one up as well. So again, presser foot down, I'm holding on to these threads, needle down, holding on for the first few stitches, get rid of that pin. And then again, once my needle's down, you can move this. This is how I'm able to sew this without marking it. I can just pick this up, move it, and I can tell myself, I'm trying to sew a straight line right off to this edge until I hit this pin. Okay, so if I had it marked or if I didn't have it marked, it's still ultimately a straight line that's going to this point. And I'll go ahead and get rid of that one too. There we go, right off the edge, super smooth. And again, here I can see I've got this perfect smooth diagonal, goes right off the edge, and it looks like it definitely went a little over my blue line on this side. But I think it's going right to my dart point, so I'm feeling okay about it. So I will again tie this in a double or triple knot so that it doesn't unravel on me. And then definitely always tie the ends of your dart points. There's really no other way to close them. So make sure you always leave yourself quite a few inches there to tie this. Just a gentle double or triple knot. You're not trying to pull so tight that you create like a gather or any tension, okay? It should be nice and smooth. So now I should have two darts. See, there's one, and over here there's the other, the left and the right. And this is the front of my skirt, okay? She's got shape built in. This is, again, is center front where that notch is. And both of these dart excess bits can be pressed towards center front, so they both get pressed towards the inside. So I'll come over to the iron so I can do that. So again, I'm just laying this down, kind of using the iron to push and going with the tip of my iron into the tip of that dart. And I'll do the same on this side, making sure that I'm not catching any unnecessary folds of fabric. And lift up the whole piece of fabric if you need to. Again, at this point, you have made a three-dimensional shape. So again, ooh, so much fabric. You can see it blends to this really nice point here. And same here. Blends to this really nice point. And this would wrap around the body really nicely. When we get all done with this, I'll show you guys on a mannequin how it kind of curves around the body really perfectly. So this is my front. I've already got 2 darts done. And I did 1 of the back pieces, right? So now I just need to do the last back dart, making sure I have done it in the opposite direction. So I'm going to pull this way. Ooh, my iron is talking to me. So I'm going to pull in this direction for my back dart, and I will have all 4 darts done. And I'll go ahead and finish this with you guys. Okay, and so same here, I've got this blue dot. I can pinch right on that blue dot, right there. Or I can put a pin through it, whatever I need to do. But I'm going to pin it now just to mark it in place, okay? And now I'll sew this last dart. So I'll have 4 total. And our skirt will pretty much just come together right after that. So needle down, I've already walked those first 2 stitches, and again, this is how I normally sew it. I now just with my eyes, I say I'm going to sew straight from here until I get there. Okay. And so I went a little bit further than I wanted to go. I'm not too super stressed about it. Let's see how it works out, because here's my end point, and I went about 1/4 of an inch past. But as long as I can still press it out nice and flat and the fabric hangs okay, I'm not going to stress it too terribly much right now. But ideally you do want to hit that point. Exactly. Okay. And then hopefully, since you won't be sewing with the camera in front of your view, you will be able to get some better precision. Okay, so now I've got this last dart, and where am I going to press it? I'm going to press it towards center back, which center back has that double notch. So again, I can just come over here and push it towards that center back with the tip of my iron going into that dart point. There we go. And I've got a nice, neat, pretty press, and look how beautifully, seamlessly that blends in. Okay, so those are our 4 darts. And next we'll be ready to assemble the skirt.